When we have a world without fathers, we have men that are lost. When we have a world where fathers are not empowered by the culture, men are lost. This is not about victimhood and being a male. This is not about complaining about it. This is about how do we gain power in finding ourselves as a man who can stand on our own 2 feet when our culture may not empower that. If you want the solution, that's what this is about. All right, inspiration on our Father's Day call. It's June 21st, 2020. I don't know when you're watching this, but we're talking about fatherhood. We're talking about men. We're talking about perhaps a lost culture of men looking for leadership and fatherhood. And it's so interesting because what we see as men on how to be strong is how we gain strength on a social level. How do you gain strength? How do you gain a sense of self? How do you gain a sense of identity? How do you be a man? How do you gain masculinity in a definition that works for you? But in a culture that doesn't have fatherhood respected, and I'm not saying that as a political thing, like we're in a culture where we have so many great options, but we have the consequences of those choices and options and freedoms and so on. When we have that, we have men seeking out archetypes without experience on what it means to be a man. And I want to bring this up because we were just talking about this. And for me, I've lived very much a man's life, very much of what I consider that. Like I'm a father, but beyond that, life with women, life with travel, life with adventure, life with fighting, life with all these things. And by all those things, I am not the best at. I'm not the greatest at. But when it comes down to it, man, it's pretty amazing. And I never worry about that. I never worry about my masculinity. I never worry about if I'm a man or not. And I see this plague build with men so much. And I want to talk about a few characteristics. Because in the men's development industry, which is huge, it exploits and takes advantage of men looking like men, but are not. Right? And that can lump in almost everybody that you see as coaches or megaphones for this and whatever. But the way that I know this is because the few men that I know, and actually not few, like the real man that you want probably lives on your street. The real man that you're looking for to teach you doesn't look like a billboard of masculinity. The real man of what you want is somebody who has lived it, right? Who has lived with the hard choices of that and made mistakes and failed in all these different ways. But when I look at those men, they speak about it completely differently. And so when it comes to women, which is what we were kind of talking about here, man, I've lived it all. I've lived everything that I could ever want. My bucket list on all those things was done almost 10 years ago. And got married, had an awesome relationship. It was amazing. And that was also a huge bucket list part. And then that stopped and went right back to being able to live a life of a single man in a good way. Whenever I get that, and we're going to talk about sex here, and I think it's probably the best way to talk about that. Whenever I get there, whenever I get to the point of sex and I get to the point of completely being with a woman, whenever I seek it out, whenever I have experienced fully and gone back to the one, my complete masculinity is ravaged upon her and her femininity has accepted it, and she has influenced me, and I've influenced her, and we become this new thing, and it's this amazing experience. My goal is not to get more attention from men. My goal is not to brag about acceptance from men. My goal isn't looking for a lost father to seek approval for who I want to be. I'm not inspired to do any of that. All I want in that moment is that woman. And it's almost as if we've been so damaged as men and so lost as men that we're afraid to say that. That we're afraid to go like, man, I long to be influenced by this woman. I long to be open for it. I long for this experience. I long for this peace that you have when you exhaust your complete self within a woman. But we as men, we're like, that's almost like toxic. We can't do that because if we don't, when we look for the false archetype, or when we look for the archetype without experience, and when we look for life without leadership, when we look for people that we don't know who we can trust because we distrust ourselves so much as a culture of men that is left in the dust. And again, no reason to be a victim, motherfuckers. This is where you need to step it up. This isn't where you need to blame more. This isn't need to be where you point out how culture has failed you. But it's the reality. So what? Okay, let's get to work, right? That's what a man does. Is that we can be in that moment. When we're no longer fighting in that, we can be in that moment. Same thing goes for fighting. Same thing goes for like combative martial arts. If you really go into the fire and actually fight and hurt somebody or be hurt and damage yourself in a real fight, and I get it, like jujitsu is awesome. I love it. You know, I do sport jujitsu and I get my ass kicked all the time, but like I do it. That's my thing, right? That's different than a real fight. But when you get there, you respect it. You respect that. You realize the value of your anger. You realize the value of your determination. You realize the value of these different aspects of who you are as a man, and you can bring peace and acceptance to it. Or you can continue on with chaos or whatever and get yourself lost a little bit more. It's interesting because when I just did a video before, one of the guys on the call asked for an example of all of this and what is the goal and what is the solution, because a lot of times I'll talk abstractly about what the solution can be. It's kind of like open air, be a man, right? Whereas the problem might be a little bit more specific, or maybe I'm too abstract in that. But where you want to get to as a man is you need to realize that your life is yours alone and you follow that alone. That part of me being a father is that it is my job. It is not the mom's job to be a father. It is not society's job to be a father. Also, the consequences and mistakes of being a father are mine. That I need to learn to have that experience alone by myself. And at times, I need to talk to other people about it. I need influence and so on. When it comes to women and sex, it is my job to experience that. It is not the echoing of what somebody told me or something that I read, that it is my job to be myself in that bed with that woman, to experience her and to look at her in her eyes. It is my job to handle my mind, that my unhappiness, my happiness, my anger, my frustration, my confusion, my bliss, my delusion, my thinking of euphoria or experiences of euphoria need to be able to be handled by me. That it is my job to manage them and not to work some seesaw balance around it. That this is my body for me to handle and manage, and it is not anybody else's. The more we get into focusing on what's wrong with society, culture, women, the less we can be ourselves. And that is so important. Us, we look at the false father, and I get it. I understand why. We look at different archetypes to be ourselves, and we let ourselves, we make it so it's impossible for ourselves to be individual men and to own the identity of who we are, because we give it away to gossip and our pain and our confusion because we don't know where it goes. Men heal differently than women, and that's why you got to heal with men. Check out Austin Men's Development. Check out all that good stuff. It's a free Facebook group. I would really recommend join the Rebuild Challenge. It's $10 for 14 days, or at least when I'm recording this. It's pretty much a badass deal. You get a lot of calls and a lot of interaction and those types of things. And there's a bunch of PDFs that you can download for free down below if you want to check those out. Anyway, this is what we do. Man, you can live a good life, but it takes work and it takes discipline. So do it. All right, let's get started.